Hello again. I hope it's a good Friday for you so far. Welcome back to the Bernie Miklasz Show here on my YouTube channel, and looking forward to a lot of good college football this weekend and some NFL watching and keep up with the Blues. By the way, I'm wearing my Army cap today, the Black Knights of West Point. Army playing Tulane this evening, Friday evening, for the American Athletic Conference Championship. I think Tulane's got a better club, but we'll see. Go Army, right? I can't say beat Navy. Next week it's Army Navy, and I'll be wearing the Navy hat in my final video on Friday before the big game on Saturday. But I root for Army when I'm not rooting for Navy. All right, just so you understand. Bernie, I thought you were a Navy fan. I am, except, you know, special occasions. You got to support the other service academy football teams, right? Unless they're playing the midshipmen. All right, Katie Wu with some more good reporting over the Athletic. And man, oh man, I kind of know what to make of this, but I'm scratching my head a little bit. But let's just get into it, because what John Mozeliak is saying now reminds me of, well, it's similar, a little different, but similar, of kind of what they say every offseason, right? You know, the Cardinals are always telling their fans, well, you know, our goal every year is to make the playoffs and try to win a championship. Our goal is to win the division. Our goal is this. Our goal is that. And they never, except when they're desperate, like last offseason, coming off a 91 loss season, they didn't have starting pitching, so they went out and signed 3 free agents. It was a lot of, Sonny Gray, Lance Lynn, and Kyle Gibson. There was a lot of urgency. They really didn't have a choice. If they wanted to be respectable and to compete, they had to stock their rotation, right? But the Cardinals, as soon as this past season was over, and the Cardinals actually overachieved, they won 83 games. They really shouldn't have, but they did because of the great bullpen and some other factors. You know, the Cardinals started talking about the reset. Remember the season-ending news conference? They introduced Chaim Bloom. Didn't let him say much, but they introduced him, or he didn't want to say much. And Bill DeWitt spoke a little. Bill DeWitt III spoke a little, and mostly John Mozeliak spoke. And that's when we started talking about the reset. They started talking about the reset, and then we started talking about the reset. And then, I'm talking about me. I shouldn't say everybody. Kind of latched on to this idea that the Cardinals were putting out there, that this was going to be 2025 is going to be set aside as a season where the young guys would get a full run. You're mostly interested in the young players to see what they can do. And if you watched all of my videos, and thank you if you do, but if you missed some, that's okay too. Thank you for being here today. I have expressed skepticism. In fact, my skepticism has sort of increased as the offseason has continued. And listen, I know we're not even at the winter meetings yet, which start next week. And so the point being, a lot of things can still happen. So it's duly noted. A lot of things can still happen. But I've been looking at this like, well, we want to give, as John Mozeliak likes to say, well, we want to give a lot of runway to our young players. And, this is let me put that on hold, because I'll give you some information that'll back up what I'm saying. And we say, okay, yeah, makes sense. It makes sense. Chaim Bloom's coming in, Bill DeWitt's giving them a lot of money, and they're going to basically redo their entire minor league player development system. And this has nothing to do with the players they have down there. They have good players. That's not the point. The point is they have fallen behind pretty much every major league team in terms of the structure, the infrastructure, the coaching, the technology, the equipment, the facilities, the everything you can do to give your team, your young prospects, a chance to be more prepared for the major leagues, which has been kind of an issue. They're trying to catch up, and make up for past mistakes, letting the farm and minor league system, the infrastructure, the complex, all of this just sort of deteriorate, especially the technology, the number of analysts that they have, everything else, which also has a big impact in the draft. Analytics can actually help you identify really good gambles in the later rounds. That's how the Cardinals under Jeff Luhnow found guys like Matt Carpenter and Alan Craig and more. I'm just giving 2 particular highlights. So John Mozeliak is talking about we're going to give them runway. And so we're thinking, well, this isn't a rebuild. I never thought a rebuild. I've called it a soft rebuild, but which is not a full rebuild, and it's certainly not a teardown. But as the winter goes along, we're finding out more and more based on what John Mozeliak himself tells us. And so here's what he told Katie Wu yesterday, and this sort of connects to the idea that it makes a lot of sense, and it does. If 2025 is all about kind of setting it aside to go with a younger team and give them opportunities, and by extension, put the short-term thinking off to the side and replace it with an attitude you're going to make moves that will boost you long-term. And this is why I have advocated, or I have agreed with, the idea of you trade Ryan Helsley and you trade Erick Fedde, not because I don't like them. I like them a lot. Not because I don't think they're good. Ryan Helsley, 49 saves, club record, led the major leagues, National League reliever of the year. Dusty Blake got him throwing that slider more, and that was nasty, nasty, nasty stuff. And actually, other than the one injury in 22, Helsley's had three pretty nasty seasons in a row. He's at the top of his game, and he's at the top of his value. And I don't want to repeat this whole thing again, but his value has never been higher. And if he is only going to be around in 2025, he's represented by the Wasserman Group, and they're pretty tough. And you're not prepared to give him a contract that would be upwards of $80 million in free agency, somewhere between $80 million and $100 million after next season. In other words, giving him a contract extension. Well, if what you're doing in 2025 is all about the future, well, the future would be enhanced by trading an asset that you have that's going into his final year with the team in all likelihood, and adding even more young talent to your minor league system. And eventually those guys can become players that'll be part of your core, part of your nucleus, whatever. The same thing applies to Erick Fedde. And I wanted a little hat tip to one of our subscribers, Dustin. Thank you, Dustin. I was talking about Erick Fedde, even though he didn't overwhelm us last year when they got him from the White Sox. After his first two starts, I mean, his ERA was 2.95. His last 7 starts. I kind of take that, right? I didn't think that he was Walter Big Train Johnson coming in here. Look it up, kids, if you don't know what I'm talking about. I didn't think he was Walter Big Train Johnson. But, you make 7 starts, you pitch to a 2.95 ERA. And here's where I'm going to thank Dustin, because when I was talking about Fedde in a recent video, his value's never been higher, and he's actually a better pitcher than maybe you think. I mentioned how he ranked in the Fangraphs version of baseball, Fangraphs version of wins above replacement. He ranked 17th. And, given the hundreds of starting pitchers there are in the majors, when you rank 17th, that's a good season. And he was also 17th in ERA and some other good stats with him. Well, Dustin reminded me in one of the comments underneath that video that if you use the baseball reference version of wins above replacement, Erick Fedde was number 6 among major league starters last year, behind Subal, Hunter Green, Chris Sale, Zach Wheeler, and Paul Skeens. Now we can say, well, come on, he wasn't the 6th best, but I'm just saying one credible rating system had him 6th best. The other one had him 17. Either way, that's a good pitcher. Well, here's the deal. Again, he's a free agent after the season. And one thing that I did not emphasize enough the other day when I made the video is that, Scott Boras is his agent. And if anybody's paid attention to Scott Boras, that Scott Boras doesn't do hometown discounts. Erick Fedde, he really likes it in St. Louis. So they'll be able to sign him. That's what everyone was saying about Jordan Montgomery. Remember that? Well, Montgomery says he's willing to talk about a contract before the season, and the Cardinals never really did that. They could have signed. No, unless they told Boras to name your price, they weren't going to sign him ahead of free agency, because Boras would not agree to that. As it turned out, Boras really did really botched the whole handling of Montgomery later on in free agency by not taking some deals on the table, assuming better ones were coming, and they didn't come. And as you know, Montgomery missed all spring training. Then he signed a 1 year plus option deal with Arizona. He didn't get anything close to what people thought he was going to get. But just because Scott Boras screwed that up, that's a rare screw up by Boras. That's even more reason why he ain't going to screw it up this time with Erick Fedde and some of his other clients, right? So if you're not going to have Helsley and you're not going to have Fedde beyond 2025 as you make this turn towards a younger team, I don't know. I know some of you have expressed your disagreement with my opinion on this, and I have told you why I feel the way that I do. But I just think that you almost have an obligation in the situation you're in. I had to go back to my notes. That's what I was shuffling for here. And I know they can hold on to these two guys until the trade deadline. Maybe you get lucky. Maybe both of these guys are having big years and they don't get hurt or they don't decline in terms of performance. And maybe the Cardinals can still get something good for them, but that's maybe they can. Maybe they won't get hurt. Maybe their performance will hold up. See, that's a lot of maybes. All I'm saying is their value right now on this day, the 6th of December, I think that's what it is. Yes. It's the highest it's been. It is at peak trade time to get assets for the future that fits in your plan, right? But what is the plan? I'm now confused what the plan is. Because given the situation the Cardinals are in, when it's imperative to accumulate as much promising talent as possible, make your team stronger top to bottom, and keep that minor league pipeline of good talent flowing by adding to it, by putting more talent in that pipeline, you have a chance to trade a couple of assets that are only short-term assets and turn them into a return that would give you some long-term assets. All those years of contract control, if you hit the jackpot with a couple of these guys, you get in the trades. And it's always going to be an if. It's always going to be if this. That doesn't mean you don't make the trade, because a lot of these trades work out great. Some of them don't. But, to not at least take the chance to collect more attractive prospects that can really be part of your teams in the future, maybe even the near future, I don't know. That seems awfully short-sighted to me. If you're in this situation where you're doing a soft rebuild, reset, whatever, but you, Mr. Cardinal, John Mozeliak, you're the one that keeps telling the media, oh, you want to get younger. We're giving the younger players runway, younger, young guys, young kids, young guys. Bring on the youth. Well, if that's how you describe your situation, you shouldn't pass up a rare opportunity like this to sell high in a way that places the future over any kind of short-term gain. Sacrificing one season of Helsley or Fedde, that's an easy call. Unless you're not really serious about giving the young players, meaning pitchers too, the runway. We're going to go young. Like I said, I express skepticism about that, and my skepticism has been growing. Because what are we talking about exactly? All right, let me get to these quotes from Mozeliak and Katie Wu's story. I took the long way to get there. I apologize. Go ahead and rip me in the comment section. It's fine. Some mixed messages when you contrast what they were saying in October to what they're saying in early December. Mixed messages. Quote to Katie Wu from John Mozeliak, quote, we have every intention of fielding a good baseball team. Quote, it's going to have a different profile, but we still have a lot of belief that some of our younger players will take the next step forward. We're excited about what we have. Quote, now it's December 5th and things can happen and things can change. He's leaving himself an out. But Mozeliak said, we're still going into next season with optimism that it'll be a fun baseball team to watch. Quote, this offseason, the tone is very different, meaning than last offseason when they had to go out and rush out and get starting pitching because they didn't have any. The tone is very different in the sense of giving younger players a runway to see what we really have. Will you allow me the courtesy of stopping that point right now and to riff on that, to introduce some stuff into evidence, pardon me. And I'm going to get back to this mixed messaging. Okay. I have to do one thing first, because again, in these quotes to Katie Wu, younger players, runway, younger players, see what they can do. And I think I finally factually got around to figuring out what I suspected, which is, wait a minute. Isn't that what the Cardinals did in 2024? Seriously. See, they're selling this. It's a marketing plan. It's a marketing pitch. Hey, come see the young guys. You're going to love them. And they just keep repeating this over and over and over again. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm thinking about the roster. I'm looking at all their hitters last year, mostly hitters, but I'm looking at Andre Palante and I'm looking at McGreevy at least getting a look. And, Ryan Fernandez getting a key part of the bullpen role. He was very important. Things like that. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. You're putting it out there as if 2025 is like the first year that you're going with the kids, right? Well, we're going to let the young ones show us what they can do. They're positioning this as if this is a new thing. And old Yeller here, not the dog that died in the book. I'm talking about Yeller as in holler. Old Yeller's like, well, wait a minute. I can time out. I got to check this because I understand the marketing plan. I don't think I'm buying it all the way. And when we revisit these quotes and how the messaging is changing now. Oh, we think we can have a really good baseball team, be really competitive. Also, they know that season ticket vouchers are going to go out soon. Maybe they're trying to stop. They're trying to prevent more defections. I don't know. Going to be competitive. We really like what we have. What it didn't say, but what they're implying to get the fans to say, oh, but I think a lot of fans are kind of caught on to this thing, right? Because it sounds a lot like previous off seasons. Well, we're going to be competitive. We're trying to do this. We're trying to do that. We think we can win the division. We think we'll be in the playoffs. And once you get in the playoffs, anything can happen, right? So now it's like, hey, we think we're going to be competitive. We really like what we have. We're really excited. And then back to the runway for young players. Again, let me table that and then give you my findings on when I say this isn't new because you did it last year. Okay. You did it in 2024. You didn't go far enough with it because you gave up on Walker prematurely and you gave up on Gorman, which at that time he probably needed a reset since that's the word of the offseason for the Cardinals. But you just didn't stick with those two, and that's debatable. But what I'm saying is, other than that, and your insistence that they will get a full opportunity, each of them this season, other than that, what has really changed? All right, finally. In 2024, we're talking about position players because it's much more pronounced on the position player side, right? Players 25 or less, the Cardinals, talking about position players, okay, 25 or less, the Cardinals ranked number 1 in the majors in games played. Number 2, 25 years old or less, number 2 in the majors in plate appearances. Okay. 5th in the majors in home runs and second in RBIs. Players 25 and younger. Sounds to me like you gave a lot of young players all kinds of runway in 2024. So what you're trying to pitch to the fans and the media, that 2025 something new? No. I'll tell you what's new about it as we go along. All right, let's narrow the age bracket. 24 or less. Age 24 or less in 2024. Position players, number 3 in games in the majors, number 3 in the majors in the age group for plate appearances, 6th in home runs, 5th in RBIs. 24 or less. All right, what about age 23 or less? Cardinals were 7th in games, 23 or less players, 23 years old or less players, position players, 7th among the 30 teams in games, 4th in plate appearances, 10th in homers, 9 in RBIs. So when you keep hearing or reading, and you're going to hear it all next week at the winter meetings, young players, youth, kids, runway, turning it over to the baby birds. When you hear all this stuff next week, remember what I'm saying in the video. They did it last year. It's nothing new. There's two differences. The first thing they did was they basically said, Paul Goldschmidt, thank you very much, sir. We respect you very, very much, but we're going to move on. So that way, 37-year-old is out, and oh, by the way, you're not giving him more money. Okay, then all of a sudden you're saving a lot of money there based on him making $25 million under his previous contract. We thank you, sir, for your service. It's been nice having you. So Goldie, bye-bye. Trying to trade Arenado, not because they can get a good deal, but they're probably not going to get a good deal if they trade him at all, if they can pull it off. That's going to be mostly a salary dump or an offload, even though they have to pick up a chunk of it, right? They don't expect any big return. So it's not about adding players. In other words, they established that some young players were pretty damn good last year, right? And so you could add to that, but they're not going to do that. Oh, I'm not saying they're not going to bring in any players at all, right? They're going to need some backup. They're going to need a right-handed bat that can play center field. It's not going to be extravagant. So with all due respect to my friends out there who write and talk about this stuff, stop with this Louis Roberts stuff, all right? Doesn't fit the profile. You know why? Because it costs money. Money. No can do. It'll be, someone, and I mentioned this the other day in something that I wrote over at Scoops. I was saying, well, right-handed hitting outfielders who can also play center, because it's imperative they play center because they have two left-handed hitting center fielders in Ciani and Scott. You probably need a right-handed bat to balance that out. I'm giving you an example. I'm not endorsing this. I'm giving you an example of what I'm talking about in their price range, okay? And I'm not saying it because he's a former Cardinal. You could sign a Randall Grichuk cheap to fill that role. That's just one example of what I'm talking about. It ain't going to be Louis Robert, all right? No. And Austin Hayes, good idea. Had a terrible kidney illness that no one knew the extent of it. After he was traded from the Orioles to the Phillies, and he was fatigued, he was exhausted, he was weakened just in terms of strength. No one knew what was wrong, and they finally realized, and they did a lot of tests. He was suffering from a very debilitating kidney illness, and it sapped his strength. And once he got stronger, near the end of the season, he started to hit again. But the thing of it is, a lot of other teams now are looking at him saying, well, wait a minute now. Now we understand why he just went last year later on. Now we get it. Okay, let's go get this guy. Austin Hayes would fit that thing I'm talking about, but they're not going to they're not going to pay the money to outbid other teams for him, is my prediction, and I think that's likelihood. So they're talking about younger players as of 2025. This is some new experiment. Not to bring politics into it, but way back in the day, reading my history books, because I've always loved presidential history, right? Oh my gosh, you'd see the books I have on that. JFK, the new frontier, right? Right? The new frontier. So the Cardinals should have just adopted that and just say, welcome to the new frontier. Cardinals baseball. We love our kids. 2025. Buy your tickets. Come see the boys. They did that last year. And they actually did pretty well with it. Other than Gorman falling back and Walker having a disastrous season. They gave plenty. Let me add to what I was telling you. Players age 25 or less. Wynn played 150 games. Burleson 152. Ciani 124. Gorman 107. They had 6 guys age 25 or younger with at least 218 plate appearances. 8 players age 24 or younger. They had 4 guys with at least 260 plate appearances. Age 23, they had 3 guys with at least age 23 or younger, at least 150 plate appearances. They gave those guys runway. Okay. So they found out all these guys that I mentioned, they found, listen, Wynn, Burley, Ciani, Gorman, Walker, Herrera, Pages, Scott. I won't mention Carlson other than just that. Sajasi towards at the end of the season. They got to look at all these guys. Herrera will play more because they moved Contreras to first to keep that bat in the lineup, which will replace what Goldie was doing as a first base productivity out of first base. Herrera with a good bat. It was a little inflated, the average, by an unsustainable batting average with runner with on balls in play, batted balls in play. But still, Herrera's got a good bat, and if they're smart, they'll play him a lot behind the plate. So they got a really good look at a lot of these guys last year. And so they found out a lot about them. I think for the most part, they found out pretty much, other than Victor Scott, because he's going to get better, other than getting Walker back on track, other than not giving up on Gorman. I think, they pretty much answered all those questions. And so does it really come down to this, that the Cardinals they're turning 2025 in reality, okay? In reality, in 2025, they're turning that into, we're going the full distance with Walker and Gorman, all right? We're putting them out there. They're going to play. 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 Mozeliak told Katie Wu, we want to see Nolan Gorman get 600 and more plate appearances. We want to see Walker out there in right field. We want to see, him getting better at all things, and we're going to help him and blah, blah, blah. But in other words, not going to pull the plug on him the way they have, and they're not going to pull the plug on Gorman. It's just like, this is their year. Well, if you want to say this is the year that we are going to be 100% all in on Gorman and Walker to find out for sure what we have, okay, I'm buying that. They need to do that. But they're not limiting it to that. They're talking about, this is some big youth movement. And again, I'm being redundant. Sorry. But the youth movement actually went into effect last year and even a little bit before that. But I'm just saying last season for sure, because when you're leading the major leagues in games and plate appearances, players 25 or less, you've taken a pretty long, hard look at these guys. The only thing that's different is that, okay, now you say you're fully committed to playing Walker and Gorman and sticking with it. Like, for example, the starting rotation. Okay, if you keep Fedde, and I'm thinking there's a heck of a lot more chance of them doing that than I would have thought, because I thought it was about the youth movement, but it's not. See, if you're going to keep Helsley and Fedde, it ain't no youth movement, because you'd be cashing them in now to add more youth, good, talented youth. But no, they seem inclined. We really want to hold on to Helsley. Well, Fedde's really important. Okay. Again, they can change their mind. This could be posturing. They're telling the other teams, we're not giving these guys away. You better come. You make an offer on Helsley and Fedde, you better come strong. All right. They can change your mind. I just want to make that point out because it's obvious, rather than keeping the trade deadline. So what do we have here exactly? Now that this whole youth movement thing, if you really look closely, as I did, I think it's pretty much been exposed as talking points, marketing plan. See, I think season ticket renewals, they haven't gone out. They're about to. You're trying to make this sound better in 2025, then, maybe you sense that some people are just sort of writing this season off. I know some of you, my dear subscribers, aren't doing that. Duly acknowledged. But I know a lot of people are. And my attitude personally was one of that could be summed up very simply. This is overdue. So I'm all for it. And and if this is all about the youth movement and adding to the youth and enhancing your future in the near future by auctioning off Helsley and Fedde, well, I'm all for that too, because it makes sense. If they're one and done, what's the point? That's like short-term gain, and you lose an opportunity to have long-term gain, right? Feel free to disagree, but that's how I feel. So what is this all about? It sounds like the John Mozeliak playbook. It really does. It's just some of the language has changed. But the thing that they've done so many off seasons, trying to talk their team up, trying to say, well, we're competitive. We really feel we're competitive. We like what we have. We think our young players will come through. We like what we have. Okay, but you're not really adding anything, are you? Anything of magnitude, are you? In fact, you had a really valuable setup guy in your bullpen last year, and Andrew Kittredge had more holds than any reliever in baseball. You made no bones about it. Just you can let him walk. Because he'll get a really good contract somewhere. You don't want to pay that. So you're talking up this, again, let's use the buzzwords. Every intention of fielding a good baseball team. We have a lot of belief that some of our younger players will take the next step forward. We're excited about what we have. Things can happen, yada, yada, yada. But we're going to the next season with optimism that it'll be a fun baseball team to watch. The tone is different. We're giving younger players a runway to see what we really have. And, Katie Wu wrote, and I quote her, don't get mad at her for writing it. She's just relaying the messaging. It's the job to report on the messaging. She expressed some skepticism. This is Katie Wu, quote, one thing Mozeliak wants to make clear is that next year's reset is not a full-fledged rebuild. In fact, Katie Wu wrote, Mozeliak's desire to remain competitive indicates that at least a couple of players projected to be top trade candidates may not be on the block after all. Meaning Helsley and Fedde, for sure. And maybe Arenado's going to be more of a chance he'll stay than we assume. So she writes, the Cardinals never intended to fully tear down next year's roster. Well, I don't think we expected that. Mozeliak, Hein Bloom, and ownership went to great lengths to avoid the term rebuild in the organization's end-of-the-year press conference in October. So you see what they're doing there? They've changed a little bit of the terminology, but this is no different than we feel good about our club. We feel we can win the division. They're not saying that, but they're kind of hinting that if everything goes well, hey, we could be a surprise team. You know what the strategy is? And it's familiar to many of you. Again, it's a little different, but it's similar. You know what their strategy is? They're trying to build up hopes with the fans that this could be a better team than we think. They really like it, even though they're not adding to it. That's the telltale sign, my friends. They're subtracting, but not as much as they should. But are they adding? No, they're not adding, other than some marginal, modest upgrades that you need to fill out a roster. So you know what their strategy is, in my conclusion? Pardon me for being cynical, but can you blame a fella after, I've been writing about this group and transcribing quotes from this group and talking to this group and listening to their off-season marketing slant every off-season. And my gosh, if you're not just a little cynical, I admire you. Why would I admire you? You think, well, because you still have the faith that the Cardinals are going to do the right thing in a way that's going to benefit the fans. Hey, we're not going to be bad. We really like what we have. We're going to field a competitive team. And the strategy is this, okay? The strategy is this. They're hoping that the rest of the NL Central stinks like fish left out on the sidewalk on a 95-degree day in St. Louis. They're hoping that the Brewers collapse, and they're hoping the Cubs, don't exercise their financial power to like just blow away the rest of the division. They hope that the Reds continue to be kind of this strange team with a lot of talent, but they can't put it together, even though now Terry Francona is going to try to do that. And they're hoping, well, the Pirates are the Pirates. Okay, Paul Skeens, but we know the Pirates stink. So that should not be the strategy. The strategy of like, well, the other teams will be worse than us. Maybe. That's not a strategy. That's not trying to build up your team. And you can't fool all of the people by giving the young players the runway. Look at the rotation. If you got Gray, you got Fedde, you got Miklasz, you got Matz, you got Palante. And may I remind you, what I love about the Palante thing is the Cardinals take credit for Palante and his breakout last year. When two things they leave out, right? It's like, oh, we really like Palante. See, we gave him an opportunity, blah, 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 blah. In other words, like they're using him as an example of what 2025 is going to be about for other young players. No, you continued to miscast Palante as a reliever, even though when he made 10 starts as a rookie, his ERA was fine. And all in all, he pitched pretty solidly. But you put him in the bullpen. You kept him in the bullpen. You wrote him off as a starter. You didn't know what you had. He went into the rotation on May 29th because they had injuries, because they were desperate for a starting pitcher. They had to plug someone in. Matz was hurt. Someone else had a minor injury. And for a while, they were trying to get by with Libator. That didn't work. Then it was, well, let's try Palante. He's been stretching out down in the minors. And if you remember, and I did a video on this, it was Palante who went to the Cardinals and said, I'd really like to stretch out in the minors as if I'm going to get a chance to have an opportunity. He made the suggestion. They didn't make it. They said, okay, whatever you want. So he moved in the rotation May 29th. He had the best rotation ERA from then to the start of the season, much better than Sonny Gray, for example. But the only reason he got a chance was out of desperation. And after the first couple, he had 2 bad starts after a good first start. And then I remember reading some stories, well, it looks like Polanyi's going to, I'm sorry if I might have got cut off there. It looks like Polanyi's going to, maybe move back to the bullpen. And then when they got Fedde, I remember MLB.com was writing about, it looks like Polanyi's going to maybe go back to the bullpen. So they weren't ready to give him a chance as a starter until they absolutely had to. And then even after he pitched well, they were telling beat writers that the likelihood we'll see, but it'll probably go back to the bullpen. And this is after he had their best ERA in the rotation, and they still were hesitant. And with Miklasz and Matz around and, everyone else around, Fedde stays. Well, where are the young arms going to get a chance? They weren't going to give Polanyi a chance last year. And then they were ready to give up on him, even though he was really good. So where are the openings for, like, where a Michael McGreevy's going to get a full runway? Maybe Gordon Graceffo will get a shorter runway, but a runway nonetheless. If Quinn Matthews' first 10 starts at AAA is unhittable, well, you're going to have room for him in the rotation? Where's the runway? Unless you move a couple of people out of there. All right. I'll stop for now. It's 39 minutes. I had a lot to get into now, man. So don't be complaining about the length of the video. I don't want to hear that. They're not adding players. They're running back with the youth movement that they actually put in effect last year in an extensive way. They're dumping salary, and they're talking about playing all these kids as if this is the first time they're going to do this. And as we sit here today, it could change. They still don't have enough rotation spots. Pardon me. They still don't have enough runway for young pitchers that are in their organization and making their way to St. Louis, right? Spin. Mo's going to go down spinning, ain't he? May not go down winning, but he going to go down spinning. I might be back with a part 2 to this. I'm serious. So check back, or if you subscribe, you'll get it notice of that anyway. All right, I'll shut up. Thank you very much.